Many of you will already know of the passing of the lovely Deborah P Kolodji, who you've heard many times on this podcast. Her poetry, her analyses, her workshops. She was a fabulous writer and very generous with her support for others in the haiku world. She leaves a hole in our poetry lives, and I know for many of you, she'll leave a very, very personal hole. God bless Debbie. May you rest in peace. If only my window were a spaceship window. Saucer Magnolia. If only my window were a spaceship window. Saucer Magnolia. Deborah P Kolodji, Poetry P Journal 2/24. Social distancing. Scrub jays gather in the jacaranda. Social distancing. Scrub jays gather in the jacaranda. Deborah P Kolodji, Poetry P Journal, Winter 2020. Broken fountain, the drip of alternative facts. Broken fountain, the drip of alternative facts. Deborah P Kolodji, Poetry P Journal, Spring 2021. Thank you for the poetry, Debbie. Now this month, we're mainly continuing with our delve into Senryū, and Debbie, bless her, has given me a segue into the start of what I wanted to talk about. We've looked at Senryū and its historical basis. We've seen that often Senryū was written as a result of dissatisfaction with elements of life, religion, marriage, governments, to use a few examples. Well, now next month in September, we have another call out for a Senryū topic, Mad Coup. Bona M. Santos very kindly gave me the prod to use this prompt, will be along next week to talk to us about Mad Coup, why she writes it, where it comes from. I think you're in for a treat. Bona and I have already recorded the podcast, and we discover, and if I'm honest, it wasn't much of a surprise, a joint passion. And it's not haiku, although that's a joint passion too. Do come back for that next week, and to hear exactly what we'll be looking for from your poetry in September. If you'd like to start thinking about what you're going to write, I'm going to read you some poetry in a minute that might get you rushing to your notebooks, pen in hand, or tapping out some poetry onto your phone, or however you write your poetry. The important thing, of course, is that you write. I realised as I read the Senryū submissions last time and virtually chatted with the editing team that I probably had not been true to my principles. I had censored what you should write about. Please don't write to offend, I pleaded with you. Don't write about politics. Be careful with religion. And to be honest, I probably would still say, don't write if your end goal is offending. But there is something about today's publishing world that worries me, and that's the censorship. I believe there are some authors who are thinking about what will or won't get published and write accordingly. And that goes against the grain with me. And I'm very cross with myself for saying, please don't write about this or that. And I'd like to apologize. So this time, I want you to feel free to write about your frustrations, the vagaries of life, to be comedic or dark, to comment on societal bits. Your work will be judged on its craft. Of course, that's not to say that we'll publish everything. There have been times when I've had submissions that have absolutely revolted me. terrified me even. But if we judge all the work on its literary merit, I think we're going to be okay. Long story short, let's have some Senryū with bite. Okay, shall we hear some poetry, some Senryū to inspire you? Let's. As if my garden didn't have enough weeds, chin hair. As if my garden didn't have enough weeds, chin hair. Nitu Yumnam from Femku magazine, issue 35, 2024. Fresh lime juice. How can my day be so dull? Fresh lime juice. How can my day be so dull? Minal Sarosh from Wales Haiku Journal, Senryū, 2024. As I sit down to record this, I have had anything but a dull day. One day I'll tell you about my next door neighbour. Oh, he's a holy terror. In the polluted pond, a frog croaks. In the polluted pond, a frog croaks. Redmond Rosehip, aka Alan Pizzarelli, from his book Mind Saps. In the confessional, the paedophile priest is again given absolution. In the confessional, the paedophile priest is again given absolution. Alan Pizzarelli, Mind Zaps, 2019. White supremacist. His obituary doesn't mention it. White supremacist. His obituary doesn't mention it. Johnny Baranski from Bones, issue 2, 2013. Making a cup of green tea doesn't stop the war. Making a cup of green tea doesn't stop the war. Robert Epstein, Modern Haiku, issue 45.2 in 2014. Arlington, the uniformity of shadows. Arlington, the uniformity of shadows. Michael Henry Lee, from Write Like Isa, a Haiku How-To, by David Lanouille. And now I have a couple from our very own editor, Vandana Parashar. Alzheimer's. She is my mother, on and off. Alzheimer's. She is my mother, on and off. And that one was in Haiku Dialogue from the Haiku Foundation in September 2020. And it writes about something that more and more of us will experience. I heard some statistics this morning, and I'm sorry, I don't remember what they are. They were UK statistics about the rapid increase in dementia, and in particular, Alzheimer's, over the last few years. Pregnancy test. Have my eggs been quarantined too? Pregnancy test. Have my eggs been quarantined too? And again, that was Vandana Parashar, this time in Failed Haiku, Volume 5, June 2020. And Vandana is highlighting, when I read it anyway, things that will affect us probably in the future. There seem to be, in my experience anyway, just anecdotal, more and more people having problems with pregnancy. 2 cars passing on the freeway, husband and wife. 2 cars passing on the freeway, husband and wife. Jack Kerouac, from the Book of Haikus edited by Regina Weinreich. In the town dump, I find a still beating heart. In the town dump, I find a still beating heart. And that was from George Swede, and it's been published in a number of places. For example, Hammerskeg in 1980. Mental illness diagnosed in a sentence. Mental illness diagnosed in a sentence. That's Laurie Greer, which was an honourable mention in the 2023 Marlene Mountain competition. And Vandana Parashar wrote a little commentary of this poem, and she says, on first reading, this coup seemed a simple observation about the society dismissing or making light of any mental health issue by just saying they have depression, without actually acknowledging the underlying cause or the need for therapy. But then, on repeated reading, I unwittingly paused after mental illness diagnosed, and a new meaning revealed itself, and this coup became all the more powerful. Doesn't diagnosed with mental illness seem like a sentence, a punishment, considering all the trauma and societal indifference or ridicule? For me, it was about the disdain we hold for mental illness. Often it's seen as something shameful, and this poem seemed to me to sum up just that, without needing to pause after diagnosed. But I see Vandana's point. And I wonder, where do you go with this poem? And I have one last poem for you that shows that sometimes Senryū are just meant to be uncomfortable and dark. The screaming protester insists I'm not a real father. Still no heartbeat. The screaming protester insists I'm not a real father. Still no heartbeat. And that's by Joshua Gage. And you'll have read it in the Poetry P Journal, 3/24. Well, I hope you enjoyed a bit of poetry with Bite. Maybe found yourself outside your comfort zone. Whether you go comedic, dark, or whatever in the next submission call, push yourself so you feel you've tried something new. And in the best tradition of Senryū, if you want to try something but wish to be anonymous, why not do that? But of course, if you want that anonymity, just make sure I know. Did you notice when I was reading through those pieces that many of them come from quite a time ago? There are a few recent poems from 2024, but a few from the 2010s, and one that obviously went way back to 1977. And I wonder, does that confirm what I was saying, that people are afraid to really write about things that trouble them because they might be on the wrong side of the argument? But if we don't write about these things, how can we debate and how can we find our way through it without polarizing the argument. Anyway, there will be links in the show notes. Do go and have a look. And if you've enjoyed the podcast, do tell your friends about us. And if you can sponsor us with a membership, which has benefits to you, or a coffee from time to time, you'd be helping us to keep this show on the road. That can all be done via Buy Me a Coffee, and you'll find that on the website at Poetry P. Now, as this podcast goes out, there's a new video prompt. Make sure you click over to YouTube if you're not already there and leave your poem in the comments. Linda will read it. She reads all of them, and perhaps you might find yourself in the journal or featured on the podcast. How lovely would that be for all of us? So until we meet again next week, I hope, keep writing. And if there's anything missing from the show notes that you'd like some information on, just email me. Ciao.